Recently, you guys took a poll asking which gaming PC you wanted reviewed next, and 60% of you chose this one. After spending thousands of hours over the past year testing and reviewing gaming PCs, I can tell you from personal experience, it's definitely a beast capable of some insane FPS. But we're gonna help you figure out if it's actually a good purchase in this 100% honest and unbiased review of the MSI Infinite RS. This configuration that we have here for you includes an i9-14900KF CPU and liquid-cooled 4090 GPU. I'm going to quickly take you through the unboxing and what's included, gaming and creator benchmarks, design and build quality, the internals, thermals, fan noise, overall ease of use, pricing breakdowns and comparing its price to performance ratio against the competition, and my overall top likes and dislikes. If you decide against this PC after anything that I say in this video, just keep watching because I'm also going to be sharing with you some alternative PCs that I recommend for every budget. I'll include links down below for all the products that I mention, as well as tagged directly on this video. I guarantee that by the end of this video, you will know if this PC is right for you or not. But if you still have any questions, just shoot me a comment, and if you're publicly subscribed, I guarantee a personal response. But first, let's rewind back into the past real quick and check out the unboxing. First thing you'll notice in the box is a smaller box with your included keyboard. I love that they gave us this higher quality mechanical gaming keyboard with this pre-built, but I really don't like that you're stuck with this awkward RGB with only one locked color per row. Most people would be okay with just one solid color for the whole thing, but this is just weird. There really wasn't anything that I liked about the mouse. The very loose and wobbly left and right clicks definitely felt very cheap overall. Then further down, we've got a bag in here with a technical support card, some very obvious unpacking and startup instructions, a card reminding you to not eat the battery on the motherboard, and then we also got an M.2 locker for your SSD, a beast of a power cable, your Wi-Fi antennas, and lastly, some SATA cables in case you'd like to add any more hard drives. As far as the design goes, I'd say I'm pretty impressed. We've got 9 fans total in here, 3 massive 140mm intake fans on the front, and right behind that, a 240mm radiator with 2 more fans. These are actually part of our liquid cooling for our GPU. We've also got 3 exhaust fans on the top, right underneath our 360mm radiator as part of our AIO liquid cooling for our CPU, and then 1 more large 140mm exhaust fan on the back. To the right of our CPU, we've got our non-RGB T-Force Vulcan 5600 MHz DDR5 RAM, 2 32GB sticks for a whopping total of 64GB. This is majorly overkill for gaming, but could be useful for creators that do a lot of 4K editing, motion graphics work, or 3D work. Underneath the CPU is our SSD and the main drive that our operating system and everything else is installed on. The one they included with this pre-built is an MSI M482 2TB SSD, and after testing it, I can say that I'm very pleased. 7,000 megabytes per second read and 6,500 write. That's pretty fast. The star of the show, though, is definitely our water-cooled 4090 Supreme Liquid X GPU. Probably one of my favorite designs that I've ever seen on a GPU. Underneath the GPU, we've actually got 4 extra PCIe slots, 2 big and 2 small. And get this, they're actually all usable because this thinner water-cooled GPU only takes up 2 slots. Next to that, we've also got 1 more M.2 SSD slot for additional high-speed storage. And all of this sits on an MSI Pro Z790 VC Wi-Fi motherboard. And at the very bottom, peeking through this little window, is our high power 1000 watt 80 plus gold power supply. Thankfully, this one is modular, so if you ever need to upgrade or replace it, you're not going to have to rerun any of your cables. The top panel and dust filter are pretty easy to remove for cleaning, and for the front panel, you just need to first open up the doors on both sides in order to remove that and the magnetic dust filter behind it. And then swinging around to the back, we've got some very clean cable management, 2 bays for 2 more 2.5-inch SSDs, and at the bottom, 2 2 more bays for traditional 3.5-inch mechanical hard drives. For the ports on the top, we've got your LED button for cycling through the RGB animations, 2 USB 2.0s, a microphone and a headphone jack, 1 USB-C, a reset button, and your power button. On the back, 2 more USB 2.0s, a PS2 port for older keyboards and mice, an HDMI and display port. The only reason you'd ever use these though is if your GPU isn't working. 4 more USB-As, 1 USB-C, your Wi-Fi antennas, and your audio ports. And then on the back of our GPU, 1 HDMI and 3 display ports. For the software, the main program that you'll be using is the MSI Center. Within hardware monitoring, we've got a bunch of real-time stats for the most important components within your PC. Another important one is user scenario, where you can quickly adjust your fan profiles for extreme performance but loud fans, and then all the way down to silent for quieter fans when you really aren't pushing your PC that hard. Mystic Light is where you can fine-tune and customize and sync your RGB for everything connected to your PC. It's really pretty lame that MSI's own included keyboard and mouse do not work with this though. And then if you're a more advanced user, within the BIOS there's plenty of other options for you to customize even further if you want to fine-tune or overclock to squeeze some higher performance out of your PC. To keep all PCs fair and on an even playing field though, we only test at stock settings without any overclocking. As far as the fan noise, in quiet mode it was just a little under 41 decibels. And then during extreme gaming, it only brought the fan noise up to just a little under 42 decibels. And you can see here, this is one of the quietest PCs that we've ever experienced in performance mode. Now for the thermals, you can see in our thermal imaging time-lapse from computer off to full-on gaming that unlike most PCs which have a strong hotspot on the glass right next to the GPU, we've actually got a nice and even distribution of heat because of that liquid cooling. The hottest parts were the VRMs right above our CPU, and then around back on the back of our CPU. Overall, the back and top exhaust fans did a great job removing the heat. The majority of our testing is spent in actual gameplay though. These were our CPU temps for several different games at 1080p. You can see that compared to some of the other similar spec pre-builts that these temperatures were a bit cooler than others. And then averaging all 1080p gaming temperatures data together on almost 40 of the last PCs that we've tested, this gives us an even better overall perspective on how it stacks up against the competition. And this showed it to have the second coldest i9 that I've ever seen. This pre-built actually got cooler than most of our i7 4080 combos too. Then jumping into 4K gaming, we organized this chart by the GPU because high resolution gaming puts more pressure on the GPU and eases up on the CPU. This was by far the coldest GPU that I've ever seen. Way less than even that way more expensive Origin PC Genesis that we reviewed with closed loop water cooling. Performance and gaming benchmarks. And up next, the most important part of this review, the price to performance ratios. For those of you that were nervous about the Intel issues, I tested this PC before and after the BIOS updates that Intel said fixed the issue. There really didn't seem to be any performance difference after the update, but at least it's safe now. Even before the BIOS updates though, I never saw my CPU reach those dangerous voltage levels that some people were experiencing. But if you'd like to update your BIOS as well just to be safe, then click on my link in the description to take you to the motherboard page. This will have the latest BIOS. Go ahead and download that, extract it and transfer it to a thumb drive, restart your PC, and then as it's restarting back up, repeatedly hit the delete button until you enter the BIOS. Click on M flash, then yes to reboot, click on your file and then click on the subfile, and then yes to update. Now back to the benchmarks. For Cinebench R23, which simulates its 3D rendering power, we got a multi-core score of 36,276 and a single core score of 2,297. By the way, all rendering software can utilize multiple cores, so that's the most important score here. This showed it to be slightly above average compared to other PCs with 13th and 14th Gen i9s. Another very helpful test for you 3D renderers is the V-Ray benchmark. And these were our CUDA, RTX, and overall V-Ray performance scores. The GPU scores did fantastic. 3rd place overall. This is an important score if you're doing a lot of high polygon 3D modeling or real-time viewport rendering and lighting. The overall V-Ray performance score though is a CPU-based rendering test that demonstrates how well a PC can handle the more advanced realistic rendering that takes a lot longer to calculate. And unfortunately, this V-Ray performance chart showed it to be slightly lower than average compared to the other PCs with i9 CPUs. And unfortunately, for those of you who use Blender, we got dead dead last place compared to the other top tier PCs. And the last set of benchmarks for creatives before we get into gaming are the Puget Benchmarks. For DaVinci Resolve, we got 2,893, and compared to the others with similar specs, it's unfortunately on the lower end. Adobe Premiere 14,836, same thing here as well. For 3D Mark, which is a great benchmark used to predict a computer's overall gameability, we plugged in these overall graphic and CPU scores into our master chart, and you can see here that it ranked very well. Actually, the second highest graphic score that we've ever seen. Actual gaming benchmarks are probably what you guys care the most about though. These are a few clips from the gameplay from some of those games. We took the many hours of testing from all of those games and averaged the FPS against the competition, and you can see here with 1080p gaming, it did pretty well alongside other similar spec gaming pre-builds. And then averaging all of those gaming FPS together gives us an even broader overall perspective on how this PC performed against the rest. And as you can see, this is unfortunately below average. You don't really purchase a PC with this kind of GPU power though for 1080p gaming. Most gamers with machines like this play at 1440p and 4K. Our average in 1440p was about 264 FPS overall here. And you can see here that this was about average for an i9 and 4090 combo. And checking out the FPS for each game individually at this resolution, you can see that the only game that we don't hit at least 200 is Cyberpunk. In 4K, our average FPS dropped about 27% with an average of 193 FPS, which is one of the highest that we've ever seen. And then breaking it down game by game shows that we're still getting almost 70 with Cyberpunk's insane ultra settings graphics. Now the most important part, the price to performance ratios. Right now at the time of this recording, this PC costs $4,000, but click on this view products tag directly on this video for the most up-to-date pricing. Comparing its price to performance ratio against the rest at 1080p, it's actually one of the worst deals with one of the worst price to performance ratios that I've seen yet. But water cooling a GPU is really expensive and was actually way less expensive than the other PC that I reviewed that also had a water cooled GPU, the Origin PC Genesis. The PC with the best price to performance ratio was that insanely priced Skytech King 95 that I just reviewed. This PC was unfortunately no better at 1440p, still a pretty high dollar per FPS ratio here too. High is not good, but because of its better performance at 4K, it actually moved up the charts quite a bit here. If you're understandably at an entirely different price point, these are my recommendations for every budget. I've also got links in the comments and description below for each of them, as well as tagged directly on this video. If this PC is understandably too much, then I would go with the Corsair Vengeance i7 500. It's $250 less expensive and actually a better performer than this one. It also has a 2-year warranty, which is double what most PC brands offer, and it's also the most purchased top tier PC that I've seen purchased by my viewers. Third most purchased overall when factoring in the slower, more affordable PCs. It's basically what the large majority of you end up choosing. If you're wanting the best bang for your buck i9 4090 combo, then that's going to be the HP Omen 45L. $2,900 for these specs is actually pretty insane. I would just hold off on any overclocking with that one until HP gets their BIOS updates with that Intel fix. If you need to be under $2,500, then I would go with the Lenovo Legion Tower 7i. I reviewed the top tier version, which hasn't been in stock for the longest time now, but the i7 480 Super version is less than $2,400, which is actually incredible. For those with a budget under $2,000, hands down, not even a question, the Skytech King 95 with a 7800X3D CPU and 4070 Super GPU. I just recently reviewed this one, and for 1080p and 1440p gaming, the best price to performance ratio that I've ever seen. I'm actually not really sure how Newegg is making money on that PC selling it for that inexpensive, because slower versions of that PC on Skytech's actual website actually cost more. My guess is that it's probably not going to be that price for that much longer. If you need to be closer to $1,000, then I would go with this CyberPower Gamer Extreme that I reviewed last year with an i5 and 4060. If $1,000 is still too much, then I would get this exact version of the Victus by HP 15L that I reviewed with a 1660 Super and i5 for just a little over $600. But that's the bare minimum that I'd recommend for semi-decent graphics settings and responsiveness. If you're coming from a console like the Xbox Series X or PS5 and you want your graphics to at least match that, then you'll need a PC with at least a 3060 or in this case a 4060 GPU, which then you'll need to bump up your PSU to 500 watts and also bump up your RAM to 16 gigabytes, which then brings the price of this one up to over $800. Overall, for this price point, I was hoping for just a little bit better performance, but at the same time, it's also the least expensive top tier PC with a water-cooled GPU that I've ever seen. The fact that this PC keeps both the CPU and GPU cooler than all the other PCs that I've ever reviewed is most likely going to make it worth it for quite a few gamers. Keeping the most expensive and most important part of your PC as cool as possible will prolong its lifespan. If you do decide to purchase this PC or any of the others that I mentioned, then please remember to use my affiliate links in the comments and description below, or tag directly on this video, as I get a small commission at no cost to you for every single purchase made. And it's actually a major factor in keeping this channel going and getting better and better for you. I'd also like to personally thank all of my members for their monthly support of this channel. Also make sure to like, comment, and subscribe with notifications turned on to stay up to date with all of my latest tech and gaming PCs. Thanks for watching, guys. I love you guys. God bless.